Hello everyone. Now that we have covered some of the history and fundamentals of AI, let's do a practical exercise where we'll develop a model capable of determining if the animal in a given image is a cat or a dog. As you may recall, convolutional neural networks are excellent at solving tasks related to images, so that's what we'll build in this practical exercise. To develop our model, we'll use Google Colab, which is a tool based on Jupyter Notebooks. Google Colab is a great prototyping tool since it provides a Python environment with most of the well-known packages installed, and it allows you to use graphical processing units, which speeds up the training process of models. Let's start by changing the runtime of our notebook. To do this, open the Runtime menu, select the Change Runtime Type option, and then in the list of hardware accelerators, select T4 GPU and save it. This will make sure that we'll use a GPU when training our model, which will speed up the process by quite a bit. Having large amounts of good data is very important and will be detrimental to the performance of your models. Therefore, you should spend a significant amount of time collecting and processing it. There are numerous ways to get data. You can look for it on sources like Hugging Face or Kaggle, use the data that you already have, or collect data yourself if you don't find anything suited for the task you want your model to perform. For our exercise, we'll use a dataset from Hugging Face. This dataset is called Cats vs Dogs and contains several images and their respective label on whether that image contains either a cat or a dog. If the image contains a cat, the label will be 0, otherwise the label will be 1. To use that dataset, we'll need to install the datasets package. To do this, let's run pip install datasets. Let's run this and add a new cell below by pressing Alt-Enter. Now that the installation is complete, let's import the load dataset function from the datasets package to load the specific dataset that we want. In this case, the name of the dataset is Microsoft/Cats vs Dogs. And the split that we'll use is train, since it's the only one available. Some datasets might already split the data into training and testing data, but it's not the case with this one. Once the download of the dataset is complete, we can inspect it by typing the variable name and executing the cell. We can see that the dataset has almost 25,000 items in it. We can further inspect the dataset by giving it the index and the feature that we want to see. For example, let's add a new cell where we pass index 0 and feature image. As you can see, the image on index 0 contains a cat. Let's do the same, but change the feature from image to labels. As you can see, it printed out 0. Let's now do the same, but for the index 20,000. Let's see the image. And its label. As you can see, it printed out 1, because as I mentioned before, in this dataset, images that contain a cat are labeled as 0 and images that contain a dog are labeled as 1. Now, let's save the images on the disk. We'll begin by creating a folder called dataset, which will contain 2 more folders, one named cat and another one named dog. Here on the left, we can see that the folders were successfully created. With the folders created, let's now iterate over the dataset. Firstly, we'll check if the image format is JPEG to avoid any corrupt images. And then we'll check the labels. If the label is 0, we'll save the image under the cat folder, otherwise we'll save it under the dog folder. Now, let's divide the dataset into sets, training and validation. When training a model, you should not use all the data. Instead, you should use a larger amount for training and a smaller one for validation. This ensures that the model does not focus only on learning from a specific dataset, but also performs well when faced with new and unseen data. In this scenario, we'll use 75% of the data for training and 25% for validation. To split the data, we'll use a utility function called ImageDataSetFromDirectory from TensorFlow. TensorFlow is a package created and maintained by Google that we'll use to create and train our model since it specializes in numerical computation, large-scale machine learning, deep learning, and other statistical and predictive workloads. Let's declare some variables for the image size and the batch size. Let's also declare two more variables, two of the training and the validation dataset that will be outputted from the image dataset from directory function. To use this function, we'll start by passing the path to our dataset folder, and we'll say that we want the labels to automatically be inferred from the folder structure and that the label mode is binary. Then, we'll specify that the images should be converted to grayscale and resized to 128 of width and 128 of height. We will also define the number of samples to be processed in one iteration of training by specifying the batch size, say that 25% of data should be used for validation, and that we want the function to output both the training and the validation set. Finally, we say that the images should be padded so that they are not deformed from the resize. We define the shape of each image and pass a random seed for shuffling and transformations. Once we run the function, you'll see that we'll use almost 16,000 images for training, which corresponds to 75% of the dataset, and around 5,000 images for validation, which corresponds to 25% of the dataset. Now that we have the data ready, it is time to create our model. To do this, we'll use Keras, which is a high-level API included on TensorFlow that facilitates model creation. Keras allows you to build models using either a functional or sequential approach. For this example, let's use the sequential approach. At this point, we can also import all the layers that we'll need to create our model. Let's declare our model by saying it will be an instance of sequential, and let's add some layers into it. The first layer of our model is the input layer. In this layer, we need to define the format that it will accept, which in this case is the image width and height, as well as the number of channels. Since we are using grayscale images, we'll set the number of channels to 1. However, if you have a scenario where you use colored images, set it to 3. Now that we have the input layer defined, let's add some convolutional blocks to our model. These convolutional blocks will be formed by 4 types of layers: a conv2d layer, a batch normalization layer, a max pooling 2d layer, and a dropout layer. The conv2d layer is responsible for extracting features by applying a set of learnable filters. enabling the network to detect various features such as edges, textures, and patterns. The first parameter of this layer is the number of filters, which is then followed by the kernel size that specifies the size of the convolutional window. On the third parameter, we specify ReLU as the activation function. ReLU, also known as rectified linear unit, is a linear function that outputs the input directly if the value is positive or 0 if the value is negative. The batch normalization layer is used to improve the stability and performance of neural networks as it normalizes the activations of each layer. The max pooling 2D layer selects the maximum value from each region of the feature maps. This type of layer is used to downsample the feature maps produced by convolutional layers, reducing spatial dimensions and computational complexity of the network. Finally, the dropout layer randomly sets input units to 0 with a frequency of rate at each step during training. It helps to keep the model from capturing random fluctuations in the training data instead of the underlying patterns. In other words, it makes the model less prone to overfitting. Now, let's add 3 more convolutional blocks. In each one of them, we'll double the number of filters that we use on the conv2D layers. After defining the convolutional blocks, we'll now need to add a flatten layer and a dense layer. The flatten layer reshapes the output of the last convolutional layer into a one-dimensional vector, preparing it for the fully connected layer. The dense layer, also known as the fully connected layer, is a layer where each neuron is connected to every neuron in the preceding layer, enabling the model to learn complex relationships between features extracted by convolutional layers. These two layers should be followed by another batch normalization and dropout layers. To conclude our model, we are just missing the output layer. This output layer will be another dense layer with one unit and sigmoid as the activation function, since we are dealing with a binary classification problem. If you add more animals that you want to classify, you need to increase the units of your layer to the amount of different animal types and change the activation function to softmax. For example, if you wanted to classify cats, dogs, birds, and fish, you need to increase the units of your layer to 4. Now you can run model.summary to have an overview of your model. In here you can see all its layers, their respective output shapes, and also the number of trainable and non-trainable parameters. With the model defined, it's now time to compile it. To do so, let's run the model.compile function. In this function, let's define binary cross entropy as the loss function, Adam as the optimizer, and accuracy as the matrix. The optimizer is in charge of updating the parameters of a neural network during the training process to minimize the loss function. The loss function is a crucial component that quantifies the difference between the predicted outputs of the model and the actual target values. And metrics are functions that are used to evaluate the performance of your model. In a scenario where you are dealing with more than 2 types of animals, you need to switch the loss function from binary cross entropy to categorical cross entropy. We are almost ready to train our model, but first let's define some callback functions that will be called during the training process to improve it. The first callback, which is called reduce LR on plateau, will reduce the learning rate when the metric that is being monitored stops improving, according to the factor, until it reaches the minimum allowed value. The learning rate determines how far the neural network weights change within the context of optimization while minimizing the loss function. The second callback, which is called early stopping, stops the training process and restores the best weights when the metric that is being monitored stops improving. Now we can start the training of our model by running model.fit. In this function, we need to pass the training set, the validation set, the callbacks, and the number of epochs. Each epoch represents a complete pass through the whole training set. In our scenario, we specify that we loop through the training set 30 times, unless, of course, the early stopping callback is called. Keep in mind that for the callbacks we defined, the patience parameter denotes the number of epochs, meaning that if the metric being tracked does not improve after 5 consecutive epochs, the early stopping callback will be invoked. Let's now start the training process of our model. This can take quite a bit, so I'll come back once it's finished. Here you have some examples of the callbacks being executed. You can see that on epoch 17, reduce LR on plateau was executed, and on epoch 18, early stopping was invoked. Congratulations! You have now trained your model, and it's time to test it out and do some predictions with it. Before we use our model, I'll upload two images that I've previously downloaded. One of the images contains a cat, and the other one contains a dog. To use these images in our model, we need to load them and process them to a suitable format. To do this, we'll use a library called Pillow. In order to load the images, we need to call image.open with their file path. Once we have our images loaded, we need to convert them to grayscale and resize them to 128 pixels of width and 128 pixels of height. Let's start by defining a function to resize the image. This function will not only resize the image, but it will also pad it to avoid deformation. Initially, we will call image.thumbnail to modify the image in order to contain a thumbnail version of itself, no larger than the given size and with the original aspect ratio. Then, we'll define a tuple that will be used to add borders to the image on the sides where the width or the height do not match the size that we want. If the image width is lower, the borders will be added on the left and on the right. Otherwise, if the height is lower, the borders will be added on the top and on the bottom. Afterwards, we just need to call imageObs.expand with the image and the tuple. With the function defined, let's resize our two images and convert them to grayscale. Instead of passing just the images to our function, we'll also call the convert function and pass L as a parameter so that they are converted to grayscale. Let's now inspect our images after they were converted to grayscale, resized, and padded. Now, the only missing steps are to reshape the images and run the model on them. Let's start by importing the image to array function from Keras. Then, we pass our images to this function and follow it up with a reshape. This will make sure that the shapes of the images will match the input shape expected by the model. Let's call the predict function with our cat image. And As you can see, our model predicted a 0. As you may remember from the dataset, 0 corresponds to a cat and 1 to a dog. So our model correctly predicted that the cat image does, in fact, contain a cat. Let's now run the predict function with the dog image. And as you can see, it correctly returned 1. And here we have it. Our model was capable of determining the correct animal in both images. Hopefully you got the same results, otherwise your model might need some adjustments and some extra training. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.